Coming in number 10, we have Men in Black. I mean, where do you think the idea of the smash hit comedy starring Will Smith came from? You thought it was an original idea?
Yo, I thought it was an original idea. I thought Will Smith is a genius.
No way, man.
Well, let's be honest, nothing is original anymore. As Picasso said, a good artist creates things, a great artist steals everything.
I'm pretty sure that he actually stole that line too. Well, the urban legend of the Men in Black is pretty in line with the movie. I don't think it's as fantastical or as heroic, but the idea is that there are secret government agents all throughout the US who will come find you if you have any sort of contact with extraterrestrials.
They monitor the planet and it's up to them to make sure that they don't learn about aliens.
There have been many reports from people saying that they've seen some strange thing in the sky or that something landed in their backyard and then it takes off, and then the next day a couple dudes in black suits come in who present themselves as FBI agents, and they'll come to their house and ask them some very strange questions. And even in some cases they can be threatened or things could get quite ugly.
Well, threats from strange dudes in a black suit, yeah, that would work well for me. I'm threatened by anything. I'll keep all my alien secrets to myself after something like that. Thank you very much. If I see something in my backyard, I'm reporting it to nobody. Let's move right along. Number 9, we have the Hookman.
Hush now. No more screaming, no more running. It's time to die.
The Hookman is such a famous urban legend. Not one, but 2 movies were made about this urban legend. Coming in number 8, we have Skinwalkers. This is one of the oldest Native American legends, and the legend has stretched into our folklore as we see skinwalkers represented in television and movies all the time.
The true form of a skinwalker is unknown. I mean, Che right here could be a skinwalker right now. We don't know his true form. Well, some people say that they start off as humans and then they get the ability to transform, and others say they are truly beasts who can turn into humans and other creatures to try to fool us.
But at the end of the day, does it really matter what the true form of a shapeshifter is? They can become whatever they want. You think after being a certain form for a while, you forget what it's like to be your true self. It would be like method acting when you get too into a role and you can't remember who you really are.
Well, maybe Daniel Day-Lewis is a skinwalker and he's just not as evil as the rest.
Skinwalkers have been known to use their powers of transformation to lure people into traps and kill them. Sometimes it's said that they can use parts of dead humans as food, and other stories tell of them needing human parts for rituals to continue their shape-shifting ways.
And at number 7, the abominable snowman.
Abominable snowman sighting in Spain caught on camera. That's right, folks. The proof the world has been waiting for has finally been uploaded. A Sasquatch, or Yeti, or abominable snowman, or just plain old Bigfoot, whatever you want to call him, has been spotted, supposedly.
There are so many clips just like the one you just saw on YouTube. You can check it out for yourselves. Well, we think that this is the best footage we've ever seen of this thing.
Coming in at number 6, we have the Bunny Man. There are several different stories of the Bunny Man, and almost all of them are gruesome. The most common is that he's a man who will walk through dark alleys or in the forest or anywhere with poor visibility, and he will follow people. He sports a bunny mask and has a massive axe. In the shadows, he creeps slowly, watches his prey, and waiting for the moment when they aren't protected. In those few moments when their guard is lowered, he will spring out and slam his axe into their face, taking their body back into the darkness. There have been some iterations of the Bunny Man that say he doesn't wear a mask, but his face has been horribly mutilated to make it look as if it was a bunny's. Skin has been grafted onto his head to resemble ears, surgery done on his nose and lips to reveal buck teeth and a rabbit-like nose, and disgusting scarring all over his once human image. This disfiguration that happened to him is what caused him to go mad.
Moving right along just like that, number 5, Mothman.
Hey, is it possible the famous Mothman of West Virginia could be a mysterious giant eagle? Or is it still just a big, mysterious unknown?
The Mothman of West Virginia has been a long-time urban legend dating back to the 60s, and there has been several movies and documentaries based on this creature, along with a ton of real people recounting their experiences and sharing their pictures and videos. It's such a crazy urban legend that, you know what, it might be true after all.
The sightings of Mothman continued for months throughout the Point Pleasant area. The Mothman was once seen again on the Silver Bridge. and many people believe that the creature was trying to warn people.
And at number 4 we have Baby Train. Well, let's step away from the horrifying urban legends for a second to think about something that could be true and has been a tale told all over America.
Even though the baby train sounds like something where people would sell babies to the highest bidder, this urban legend is much more wholesome.
Now, this urban legend is attached to a more forgotten time, which makes it both hard to prove and disprove.
But it's the idea of small towns that were positioned close to train stations.
These towns were so close that when the trains came in and blew its steam whistle, everyone could hear.
Now, for some of these places, they would have an early morning train come through town. If it would blow its whistle around 5 a.m., this would wake up the whole town. For most of these fine folks, 5 a.m. was too early to get up, but too late to go back to sleep.
So all of these people waking up next to their partner decided to just make a little hanky-panky.
This was a time before we had phones and Netflix. There was nothing else to do.
So this idea of this urban legend is that the towns that had the baby train would see a baby boom from all of the early morning, whoopies.
These people are reproducing faster than Joey Chestnut clears a plate of food.
Moving into number 3, we have the New Jersey Devil. Have you guys heard of this?
Claiming that this child would be the devil. When the night came that Jane went into labor, there was a terrible storm that shook the entire house as her friends and family gathered to help her through the pregnancy. The child was born normal, but it began to change into a deformed monstrosity. Its feet turned into hooves, its head resembled a goat. Leathery wings sprouted from its back, and a forked tail whipped violently around the room. The child screamed and thrashed its tail at anyone trying to hold it down.
This is a crazy tale that might actually just be true, considering the NHL team is named the New Jersey Devils. Could this be because of this urban legend?
Rumor has it a woman had her 13th baby and said, "Let the child be the devil."
Although they tried to exorcise it, shoot it, and kill it, it was deemed indestructible. And there have been 13 sightings of this creature throughout history, so it's gotta be true. 13 people have seen it.
Coming in number 2, we have Charman. We get a couple sweet points in a row, and that's the only nice ones you're gonna get.
For a second I thought you were gonna say Charmander, because I was like, that's real. Pokemon are real.
They are.
But in this situation we're talking about Charman, which isn't Charmander. Well, Charman is one of the most horrifying urban legends to come out of America. It combines some classic tales with some very specific details that make it seem like the whole thing could be true.
The story starts back in 1948. There was a house fire. A father and his son try to escape unharmed, but the flames are too strong and the two of them are burned all over their body. While waiting for help to arrive, the son is looking at his disfigured self and loses his mind. He then kills his own father.
Is this real life right now? When help eventually does arrive, the son lays on the ground and the police think that the boy, well, he's dead from how badly he's burnt. They leave for a moment and uses this as an opportunity to escape.
From this point, he has to live in the woods, hunting down people and killing them, taking what he can so he can continue to survive in the wilderness and feed his insane bloodlust without anyone finding him. And coming in the number 1 spot, we have the Boggy Creek Monster, aka Bigfoot, aka the Southern Sasquatch.
In the early 1970s, the media had a field day about a creature known as the Boggy Creek Monster, aka the Southern Sasquatch. The Boggy Creek Monster was being reported on in the news because it was accused of attacking a local family, as well as destroying and stalking livestock.
This one tops our list because this might be the most famous urban legend creature that might be real of all time.
Have you spotted one before?
A Sasquatch?
Yeah.
Real life?
Yeah.
No. Have you?
No. I wanted the anticipation to be like, oh, has he? No.
And it was like, absolutely.
I've never seen it.
No.
Well, there's been 5 feature films that have been made about this specific folklore, urban legend, and countless other documentaries exist as well.
The whole town has even turned this guy into a tourist attraction in the surrounding town.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Murfreesboro Mud Monster. In 1973, a young couple went for a romantic drive near the town of Murfreesboro, Illinois. They parked up by the river. Later on, they heard a piercing roar, which they described as sounding like an eagle shrieking into a microphone. They quickly turned off the radio and scanned the area. Another horrific shriek came and the bush in front of them shook. They turned on the car lights to see a creature that would forever be burned into their memories. It was massive, wet, hairy, and covered in mud. Its skin was almost translucent, as if it was an albino. For the next 2 weeks, it terrorized people in the town. Reports of the 7-foot-tall swamp monster kept increasing until one day it just disappeared. After that, there have only been a few more reports of the Murfreesboro mud monster since. At the time, the local police chief said, "A lot of things in life are unexplained, and this is another one. We don't know what the creature is, but we do believe what these people saw was real." Moving on to number 9 now, we have the Little People's Village. In the woods of Connecticut, near the town of Middlebury, you can find the Little People's Village, crumbling remains of tiny houses and structures that locals say were built for fairies. The story goes that many years ago, a man and his wife were living peacefully in Middlebury when she started seeing small fairy folk in the woods around their home. She demanded that her husband build them a tiny village, and so that's exactly what he did. Using real concrete and mortar, he built the fairies these tiny houses complete with walkways and streets. As the village grew, he suffered a price. People say that he began to hear the fairies' voices in his head, which eventually drove him to madness and then suicide. Now, they say the crumbling ruins of the Little People's Village is haunted by the spirits of them, or even the ghosts of the people they drove insane. You can still visit the ruins today, and even sit in the throne that was carved at the request of the king of the Little People. However, legend says the seat is now cursed, and that if you sit in it, you will be dead within 7 years. Locals will show you how to get to the village of the Little People, but many also warn that if you linger there too long, you will hear the voices of the Little People, and you too will be plunged into insanity. Next up at number 8 now, we have the Kushtaka. These are mythical shape-shifting creatures found in the stories of Native Americans in southeastern Alaska. The name roughly translates to land otter man. The story says that these creatures will shift between the human form and the otter form at will. They are cruel creatures who take pleasure in tricking sailors to their deaths. If they're not at sea, they live in rivers and deploy a very creepy tactic to attract their prey. The Kushtaka are said to imitate the cries of a human baby or the screams of a woman in order to lure the victims to the river. Once there, the Kushtaka either kill the person by tearing them to shreds or turn them into a Kushtaka themselves. Legend says that they can be warded off by using copper, urine, dogs, or fire. Some stories do tell of benevolent Kushtaka who will help people, but many feel it's simply not worth the risk to approach them if they ever do hear its cries in the Alaskan forest. Next up at number 7 now, we have the Spectre Moose. In Maine, people have been spotting a particular moose for over 100 years. This one stands out though, as they say it's spectral, a ghost moose if you will. It's also huge, standing some 10 to 15 feet high. It was first seen in the early 1900s when locals described it as a huge moose with a ghostly, dirty white color and an enormous set of antlers. The coat of the animal is sometimes described as glowing faintly. The Spectre Moose was said to have an extremely acute sense of smell and hearing, as well as the ability to appear or disappear at will and to phase through solid objects. Hunters who came across it said they could never line up properly for a shot, as the moose would just blink in and out of existence before their very eyes. In 1938, a hunter said he saw it standing among a herd of other moose. Mises? Not sure. It was stood with 2 other large males, but it made them look like dwarves. He would have thought it was just a normal, humongous moose if it wasn't for the strange white glow around its body. Moving on to number 6 now, we have Betty Grease. In Michigan, on the beaches of Lake Superior, is a place where the sand is said to sing. Local legend says that a musical voice emanates from the sand, the voice of a Native American maid who lost her love to the Great Lakes and still calls to him from the shore when visitors play the sand. How exactly do you play the sand? Well, they say the sand can be made to sing by pressing down on it with the palm of your hand or a piece of bark. It loses its magical properties though when removed from the beach. I wasn't too sure what to make of this one at first, but I've seen a few videos on YouTube now and it definitely makes a very strange noise. Perhaps you guys check it out and see what you make of it. Next up at number 5 now, we have the hauntings at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. This historic hotel is over 90 years old and has hosted some of the biggest stars in Hollywood over the years. The 12-story high building has 300 guest rooms and 63 suites, some of which are said to be haunted. 2 of the ghosts are actually famous ghosts. Montgomery Clift is said to haunt room 928, the room he stayed in while filming From Here to Eternity. People say he moves around the occupants' luggage, while others have said they've seen him in the hallways rehearsing lines for his movie or playing the trumpet. The other celebrity haunting is someone a lot more famous, Marilyn Monroe. She is said to haunt the full-length mirror that was once in her suite. Since she stayed in the hotel, the mirror has been relocated from her room, but the hauntings still follow it. People report seeing the ghostly apparition of Marilyn standing over their shoulder. Some people might like that, definitely not me. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the bus to nowhere. This one comes from Pennsylvania. Some say that this state is home to a bus that goes nowhere. It picks up hopeless people and keeps them on it forever, unless they are able to shake out of its trance. The bus is said to have no displays, no route number, and no destination. It only stops for people who want to leave where they are but have no destination in mind. Philadelphians often say they've seen it winding through the city streets. Some people also call it the wandering bus or simply zero. People say that once you're on the bus, you sit like everyone else, staring out of the window, wrapped in your own thoughts, desperate to get away from whatever pain and despair is in your life. You can pull the cord anytime when you're ready to disembark, but be warned. Legend says that time does not move the same on the bus to nowhere. Your trip could have lasted minutes, days, months, or in some cases, years. The only silver lining is that when the passengers finally do disembark, they find themselves exactly where they're supposed to be. Next up at number 3 now, we have the Snallygaster. This is a mythical dragon-like beast said to inhabit central Maryland. It was first described by German immigrants who called it the Schnellergeist, which translates to quick ghost. It's been described as being half bird, half reptile, and with a strange metallic beak lined with razor-sharp teeth. Some even say it has octopus-like tentacles. It swoops down silently from the sky and carries its human victims off to its den, where it then sucks them dry of blood. Newspaper reports from February and March 1909 describe encounters between local residents and a beast with enormous wings, a long pointed bill, claws like steel hooks, and an eye in the center of its forehead. They said its screech sounded like a locomotive whistle. Now, other than the humans it hunts, the Snallygaster is also said to have one mortal enemy, the Deweo. The Deweo is reported to be a mammalian biped that looks like a wolf but stands like a human. It's been reported all over Maryland, and locals have said they've seen vicious battles between the two creatures. Moving on to number 2 now, we have Huggin' Molly. You might think her name sounds quite nice. Everyone needs a hug from time to time, probably not from Molly. Generations of people from Alabama have grown up with this very creepy legend. They said Molly is a giant ghost, at least 7 feet tall, who wanders the streets of Abbeville, Alabama. Late at night, she can be seen dragging her long black skirt as she goes. If you see her, run, because if she sees you, she will chase you and she will get you. Once she does, she picks you up with her huge arms and gives you the tightest hug of your life while screaming in your ear. They say the horrible sound she makes never leaves you. There have been no reports of Huggin' Molly ever killing someone, but her attacks are enough to strike fear into the hearts of everyone around. And finally at number 1, we have the Carter brothers. In New Orleans in the 1930s, a young girl ran into a police station begging for help. She said that 2 local businessmen, John and Wayne Carter, had been keeping her hostage and feeding off her blood. She showed them the cuts on her wrist, not quite enough to kill her, but just enough to extract blood from. The police rushed to the apartment to find 4 other women tied to chairs with their wrists slit in a similar fashion. In another room, they also found 12 bodies that had been drained of their blood. The police staked the place out and waited for the men to return. When they did, it took 8 police officers to hold them down and restrain them. Their strength seemed superhuman. The pair were executed for their crimes and buried in a sealed tomb. Years later, another member of the Carter family died. They opened up the tomb to lay them to rest and found that the bodies of John and Wayne Carter were gone. No remains, no clothes, no trace that they have ever been there at all. New Orleans became gripped with the legend of these vampire brothers who could escape death itself. To this day, many sightings of the brothers have still been reported, especially around the apartment building that they once called home. Or perhaps they still do. They've just learned their lesson to keep things more hidden. Going off at number 10 now, we have the Grunch. This one comes from Louisiana. In the early days of New Orleans, there was a road called Grunch Road that went deep into the swampy woods before coming to a dead end. That is where the Grunch people lived, a strange hybrid of albinos and dwarves, forced away from society and made to live in their own community. As the years went by, people started to doubt the story's authenticity, but it sparked up again when people started disappearing down Grunch Road. Nearby farmers reported their animals missing or finding them dead and drained of blood. Many locals now refuse to head down Grunch Road for fear of meeting the same fate. Moving on to number 9 now, we have Stull Cemetery. To those those that know the story, Stull Cemetery in Kansas is better known as the doorway to hell. Legend says that the devil himself chose the cemetery as his entrance from the underworld to our own. Now it's said that a tree once stood in the cemetery and an old tombstone there was inscribed with the word witch. The tree was used to hang condemned witches back in the day who were put to death by the locals. The tombstone apparently marks the burial spot of Satan's own child, a creature born deformed and covered in wolf hair. In modern times, the legend has continued with reports of the ground catching fire in random spots. Pope John Paul II was said to divert his private plane around the cemetery because it was so tainted by evil. Now whether or not you believe all of that, there's plenty of videos on YouTube to check out if you're interested, and I find them quite creepy. Moving on to number 8 now, we have Knock Knock Road. This one is for all of you guys watching that get very creeped out by little girl ghosts. I think they're the worst kind of ghost. Strasburg Road near Detroit has a disturbing tale of murder attached to it. Legend says that a little girl was killed on the road in the 1940s by a hit and run driver. Ever since then, people have reported the same story. They stop at a traffic light and see on the side of the road a young girl standing, just standing and staring right into your car. Whether they freeze or then try to speak to her, she slowly walks forward to the car and stares at you with deep set hollow eyes. She scans your face to try and find her killer and get her revenge. I guess you better hope you just don't look like the killer. At number 7 now, we have the Charman. This story goes that in 1948 a wildfire swept across Ojai, California. The flames consumed a cabin where a man lived with his son. He was burned alive, but the son survived, just barely though. When the authorities arrived, they found a shocking scene. The father had been flayed alive. His skin had been removed from his body and peeled off. His body was just hanging from a nearby tree. The police then searched for the perpetrator. They heard a wheezing sound from a nearby bush, and then suddenly the son just bolted out of it. The overpowering smell of him stunned the officers, and in that moment the boy ran into the trees and then escaped into the hills. In the years since then, many locals have said they've seen the Charman in the woods, horribly disfigured by his burns and tormented by his past. He's said to creep up on the tents of innocent campers in the hills, waiting for them to fall asleep. Coming at number 6 now, we have Hell's Gate Bridge. This one comes from Oxford, Alabama. The story goes that in the 1950s, a young couple crashed their car off the side of this bridge and drowned. Now, some locals believe you cross the bridge at your own peril. One story is that if you drive your car out to the middle of the bridge and then turn off all the lights, the couple will appear in your car just sitting behind you. When you turn around, they'll be gone, leaving a wet seat behind. The other story is that if you drive over the bridge and then look over your shoulder about halfway through, the scenery behind you turns into a portal to hell, just spouting fire and flames. Now whether or not you believe all of this, it's enough for some people to just look for a different way to cross the river. Moving on to number 5 now, we have 100 Steps Cemetery. This is located in the town of Brazil in Indiana. Interesting name for a town, and the cemetery is even more interesting. It's been used for at least 150 years, and in that time it's gained quite a sinister reputation for a ghostly undertaker. The story goes that as you walk up the many steps to the top of the cemetery, you must count each and every step. When you reach the top, you must turn towards the open field, and then the ghost of the cemetery's first undertaker will appear. Without saying anything, he will then reveal your own death to you in a vision. Straight away you must proceed back down the steps and count each one again. If the number is different to the one that you counted on the way up, the vision was true. An added bonus is that if anyone tries to cheat and climb up or down without using the steps, a ghostly hand will push them to the ground, leaving a red imprint on their back for days as a mark of the devil. Definitely not a place to go for just a Sunday walk then. Next up at number 4 now, we have the Goat Man of Pope Lick. I love my job because I get to say sentences like that. This is an old Kentucky urban legend about a hideous being who roams the woods across that state. Those who have seen him describe the Goat Man as having dark fur, pale skin, goat legs and twisted horns. Some people say he was an escaped circus freak, others say he was a farmer who tortured goats for Satan. Satan then repaid him by turning him into a tortured goat himself. The Goat Man is said to hide under the rusty bridge that crosses Pope Lick Creek in Louisville. Legend says he lures people onto the train tracks there and then takes pleasure in them being hit by oncoming trains. Please don't go looking for this one though, guys. In 2016, a woman actually fell to her death from the bridge while looking for the Goat Man. At number 3 now, we have Slaughterhouse Canyon. With a name like that, you know it's not going to be a pretty story. During the 1800s gold rush, a family lived in the canyon there in a little wooden shack. Every day was the same. The husband would set off into the mountains to search for gold and food for his family. Then, one day, he just didn't come back, presumably injured or killed by animals, the mountain, or even other humans. His wife waited for her husband for weeks until the whole family began to starve. Driven mad with the hunger and her children's cries, she put on her wedding dress, picked up a knife, and murdered her children, throwing them into the river, and then weeping until starvation killed her too. Legend says that if you visit the canyon today, you can still hear the mother's painful cries. Alright, next up at number 2 now, we have the Black Angel. This statue looks very creepy as it is. An old, worn, corroded angel staring down over Oakland Cemetery in Iowa City. Her sinister appearance has helped spawn a number of different legends around her. One of them says that a pregnant woman should never walk under her lest they want to lose their unborn child. Another says that if you kiss or perhaps even just touch the statue, you'll be dead within 6 months. This is the kind of story that scares everyone off. Whether or not you believe in curses, it's just not even worth thinking about. And finally, number 1 now, we have Cropsey. Many New Yorkers know the story of Cropsey, the boogeyman of Staten Island. Legend says that he was an escaped patient from a mental asylum who went on a murderous rampage. He had a hook for a hand, which he would then use to drag children back to the abandoned ruins of Seaview Hospital. Pretty creepy stuff, but here's where it gets really scary. Many parents would tell this story to their kids to scare them into being cautious about strangers, even if they didn't really believe the story themselves. But then in the 1970s, a real killer called Andre Rand really did start hunting children in a very similar way. Was he using the Cropsey legend as cover? Either way, people now take the legend a lot more seriously.